You know, I may have been born in Colorado, but stuff like this makes me proud to call myself a New Mexican. Muy bien. Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today, I'm pretty excited because we're finally reviewing the CJRB Caldera. This was one of my most highly anticipated releases of the year, and I've had it for a couple of months now, been carrying it and using it, and just thoroughly enjoying it. So, let's go ahead and get into this review. Let's start off, as always, with our blade length measurements. This is a big boy. Definitely not a small knife. We're coming in here, I mean, if we measure all the way back to right there, geez, about 3 3/4 inches. Sharpened edge, a little bit over 3 inches. You know, this is a question that I've heard a lot of people debate about and wonder about. Like, when you're measuring the blade length of a knife, is it sharpened edge? Do you measure to the closest spot on the handle? Because let's see here, if we measure to the closest spot on the handle, which is right there, we're coming in about 3.5 inches exactly. Is it the furthest spot on the handle? You know, usually I like to measure to the closest spot. But yeah, you know, that's an important question, especially for a lot of legal reasons. Like, you know, if a cop is going to throw you in the slammer for having a knife that's over the regulated blade length, you kind of want to know how he's going to measure it. And of course, I mean, you can't account for crooked cops. They might take this and go, you know, oh my goodness gracious, you have a 6-inch knife. You have a 6-inch blade on that thing. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Just out of curiosity. But yeah, either way, pretty big knife. I don't usually do this, but we're going to measure the height of the blade. About 1.5 inches. So yeah, it's pretty tall. It's a good sized knife. Let's do our size comparisons. Start off with our rats. There's the 2 and the 1. So yeah, it's definitely a not a small object. Let's bring out our Civivis. There's the Elementum. And there's the Praxis. The Praxis kind of rivals the Caldera in size. I think they're very similar in overall length. Now, the Caldera is just a little bit broader in the blade, though, so it feels a little bit larger than even the Praxis. Let's bring out our flagship comparisons. There's the Bug Out and the PM2. Again, very similar in length to the PM2, but much to I've said before that I think the 3.5-inch mark on pocket knives is, to me, that's my favorite EDC size, but this knife does feel a little bit bigger than that just because of how broad it is. And that's not a bad thing, as we'll get into later. Let's bring out some CJRBs. There's a Feldspar and the Scoria, some of my personal favorites. Yeah, we've got a lot of good knives on the table right now. I'm a big fan of CJRB. You guys probably already know that. So yeah, materials. This blade is AR RPM9, which I love. I wouldn't really call this a cleaver. This is kind of a droppy sheep's foot, a fat sheep's foot, maybe a cleaver blade. G10 scales, steel liner lock, steel clip. Yeah, really excited about this. Let's go ahead. Let's get to the cutting footage. That's what you guys want to see, right? Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the CJRB Caldera. You may not be able to see me too well right now, but that's okay. The real view is this. So as a lot of you know, I was really excited to get the CJRB Caldera. I'm a geologist, and Caldera is actually a geology term. And right here, right now, we are standing in the Valles Caldera. So, what is a caldera? Well, a caldera, first we have to talk about magma chambers. So, under the surface of the earth, there's these big caverns, and they fill up with magma and gases, and they're very important. Lots of crystallization happens in here, all kinds of good stuff. Well, eventually, a volcanic eruption happens, and all the magma and gas inside this magma chamber shoots out the side, out these vents. So you can think we have the surface here, and then we have this big, like, bowl of a cave underneath. And when all that magma erupts out, the chamber becomes unstable. And so the roof collapses down inside and forms this big basin, or caldera. So that's what we're seeing here. The Valles Caldera is one of the most intensely studied calderas in the world. It's here in northern New Mexico, just a little ways outside Los Alamos, and it's one of my favorite places in the whole world to come to. It was formed about 1.2 million years ago, was when its first eruption happened. And then its last major eruption was about 60,000 years ago, something like that. But really, really beautiful. I want to point something out real quick. See that hill right there? That's what we call a lava dome. And knowing the geology of this area, it's probably a rhyolite lava dome. And these are just areas where magma slowly comes to the surface and it builds these mounds. It makes them higher and higher. There is still active magma in this area. We know that because there's hot springs here, so there's obviously geothermal energy and heat at work. But it's really crazy that this green, peaceful valley was once the site of tremendous violence and upheaval. And I always like to think about calderas like this when, life gets tough and you start to think, I'm in a shithole. Things are bad. Everything's collapsing around me. How is it going to get better? Well, eventually things calm down, right? Okay, let's do some cutting. Alright, let's go ahead and get this going. There's going to be people driving by, but nothing I can do about that. So, CJRB Caldera, what are my thoughts? Let's go ahead and start with the action. The action on this knife is okay so far. I have not taken it apart or cleaned it or lubed it or anything like that yet, but a thumb flick works good. If the action changes with cleaning, I will mention it in the review. And I mean, it does work. The detent is just a little bit lighter than I would prefer, but it works all right. The reverse flick feels a little bit weird, but the thumb flick off this hole is excellent. Very, very good. So, action, I'd give it like a solid B on the action, like an 84%. How are the ergonomics? Excellent. This is where this knife really shines. Man, it's comfortable. You got that choil, have that little poon spoon there. You can put your thumb in or your finger. Very, very good ergonomics. My one complaint would probably be the jimping on the spine. It's pretty much non-functional at all, and it's pretty much just smooth. It's a little bit of a different texture than the rest of the spine, but other than that, it's very useless, I think is a good word. We'll use the word useless. So, yeah, not real great on that count. But let's go ahead and tilt down, and let's talk about the carry. Oops, take that knife out of my pocket. So, carry on this guy. I'm not a big fan of the clip. Like, the clip itself works, but I wish they'd recessed it. There's just not a whole lot of clearance there, and it does tend to jam up on the pocket. You can push it down over, but, the clip is reversible, which is good. It's a wide knife, so you're going to have to be prepared for that. But for as much blade as you're getting, it's really not that bad in terms of weight. And I mean, it's not super thick. It's a chunky boy, but it's not super thick. So again, high marks there. Yeah, if you're used to carrying big knives, it will be just fine for you. And even if this is like the first big knife you're going to want to try and carry, I think you'll be all right. So let's go ahead and get some cutting done. I will put the thickness behind the edge on the screen. Whoops. But as you might expect, with such a broad blade with a full flat grind coming down to a very good edge, yeah. Absolutely excellent. Really, really great slicing performance. Like to see that. All right, let's go ahead and grab our rope and do a little bit of the old rope pull. Where is my rope? Let's see if I can find that. Never fear, rope is here. Let's go ahead and do a pull through. Whoo! Gorgeous. AR RPM 9 steel, if I haven't mentioned already. One of my favorite steels. Love it. Especially in the budget category. Ooh. 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 Nice, easy to crunch through that rope with just a single push. That's what we like to see, guys. Alrighty, Mr. Pool Noodle's on his last couple of reviews. Everyone say bye, Mr. Pool Noodle. Oh. Oh man. No, blowing everywhere, but look at that. Thin and clean. The edge felt excellent going through. So there we go, CJRB Caldera. Let's take one last look. Oh, isn't that just gorgeous, guys? Love it. Can't get enough of that. Okay, I had to pull over for just a second and talk about something. By the way, this is really, really good carne seca. If you're ever in northern New Mexico, I would definitely recommend coming over to the Valles Caldera. They've got a wildlife preserve. That's, you know, if you want to see a lot of elk and deer and stuff, it's definitely worth checking out. The caldera itself is very interesting geologically. I forgot to mention, but it's about 14 miles in diameter, or about 22 kilometers. So it's fairly large. But the forest, the Jemez Mountains around here and stuff, is definitely worth checking out. A lot of people think New Mexico is just meth and deserts, and there's plenty of that, but a lot of people don't realize that there's also lots and lots of beautiful mountainous forests. Of course, those of you who watch my channel know that, because in the summers I work there in the woods, but yeah, definitely worth checking out if you're ever in the area. It's beautiful, and something that I find to be interesting is there's a big fire in here a couple years back, and so the forest is kind of starting to regrow itself now, and it's at the stage where the aspen trees are moving in, so there's a lot of little aspen all around. And so if you ever want to see a forest in kind of its formative years, you know, kind of recovering after a fire, it's really worth checking out. It really is. If you're wondering why I have all kinds of crap in the back of my truck, heading back to college right now, had to swing by the Caldera. I'll check back. Anyways, that's it. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and get into what I'm liking and not liking about the Caldera. First thing that I'm liking is the name, Caldera. I love that CJRB has kind of the geology theme with a lot of their models. And, you know, as a geologist, that's probably going to apply more to me than other people, but, you know, the nerd in me just really, really appreciates that. And on that topic, I did want to talk a little bit more about calderas, just because, you know, I have to. I gave a quick little rundown about calderas when I was there at the Valles, but let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about calderas, just because we're going to educate you guys. So, The simple definition of a caldera is it's this pit. It's a hollow that develops when a magma chamber is emptied. So it's kind of a pit left behind by a volcanic eruption. And you can have these, if you have your classic volcanoes. Draw a little stratovolcano here. Here's a little shield volcano. You have your eruptions. And then at the top of these, you might see something that's kind of like, this depression comes down from the sides, and that's up here. Same thing with this one. You'll have kind of an empty space where everything just kind of collapsed back inside. Now I tried my hand at making some 3D models to kind of explain this that I'm probably going to put with the footage I took at the Valles Caldera when I edit the video, but we're going to do a little bit more here just to kind of, give real life, or live action representation. So yeah, if we have our ground here, we've got this big magma chamber underneath. It starts welling up, starts making the ground kind of do this big bowl thing, this bulge, and eventually the magma starts to escape. You have these eruptions, and these are going to be, little volcanoes all around that are erupting stuff. In a lot of cases, these will be very violent eruptions. In the case of the Valles Caldera, the Bandelier Tuff, if any of you have ever been to Bandelier National Monument to see the cave dwellings, you'll notice that a lot of the rock in that area, of all those cliffs, it's kind of this dusty, ashy type of rock, and that's because it is ash. It's left over from pyroclastic flows from these eruptions in the Valles Caldera. And a pyroclastic flow is this big cloud of hot rock particles, like what destroyed Pompeii. And they are the most dangerous feature of a volcano. Volcanoes that release pyroclastic flows are incredibly deadly, and these things they move incredibly fast. They can go over bodies of water. They're not a cloud like you might think of in the sky where it's water vapor. It moves like a cloud. It resembles a cloud, but it's solid particles. It's solid chunks of rock and tephra that is extremely hot. The inside of a pyroclastic flow can reach just incredibly hot temperatures. And so if you get caught inside of one, if you're not, if you inhale these rock particles, they'll shred your lungs and throat and stuff, but it'll also boil you. Like, your eyes will explode and your whole body will just, boil from the inside out, which I know it's a lovely picture. But anyways, so you have these massive eruptions, right? And so all this magma in here goes from being in here to being outside. And in case you didn't know, when magma, which is molten rock, is under the ground, so when molten rock is under the surface of the earth, it's called magma. And when it erupts to the surface, it is called lava. It's a fun fact. So we have our eruptions that happen, and then after the eruptions, when the magma chamber is empty, you have this big empty cavern here. The rocks that used to be above, they fall down into the magma chamber. You have this faulting stuff. So now you have a depression. The biggest caldera in the world was discovered just recently, actually. I think in like 2018, 2019, something like that. And in the Philippines, I believe. And it's called the Apalaki caldera, I believe. Yeah, really, really cool stuff. You have calderas under the ocean, on land, all over the place. The Valles Caldera was studied in the 1980s, and it was used to form everything we know about resurgent calderas, which, as you might expect, are calderas that could become active again. But yeah, really, really cool stuff. And let's get into the knife review now. And, it just kind of occurs to me right now, I'm looking over all the rocks I have back here. I actually don't have any volcanic rocks that you would, expect to see after an eruption. I mean, I have... So this is an igneous rock. Igneous rocks are split into two groups, volcanic and plutonic, or you can also call them extrusive and intrusive igneous rocks. So this here's a piece of granite of some variety. And you can see here these large crystals. We've got some muscovite in here. We have some hornblende or augite, some quartz, plagioclase. You can see that there's these very big, well-defined crystals. This is actually a type of rock, an intrusive igneous rock, plutonic igneous rock, that would form inside the magma chamber. So in these magma chambers, the magma, when it comes into the crust is quite a bit cooler than the mantle that the magma originally welled up from, and so it starts to cool. And as it cools, crystals start to form out of the magma. Because remember, magma is molten rocks, and so there's lots and lots of elements in the magma that combine to form these different crystals. And so as the magma cools, these crystals start to come out of solution and solidify. And of course, magma is very, very hot, and it takes a long time for it to cool when it's in the crust. And so the longer a rock has time to cool, the bigger the crystals get. When that magma is erupted, it cools very fast when it's exposed to the atmosphere. And, you know, we're very cool here on the surface of the Earth. We're very low temperature. And so that stuff cools really fast, and crystals don't have time to get big. And so volcanic rocks, those that have formed from erupted magma, they have very fine crystals, very, very tiny crystals. They have a very fine texture. There's a bunch of different words for the texture of igneous rocks, porphyritic, and anyways, we're not going to get into any of that stuff right now. But yeah, I don't know why I didn't have a good rock to show, especially since usually, I mean, up until I rearranged my set, I used to have a nice little chunk of rhyolite, which would have been very, very pertinent because a lot of the composition of the Valles Caldera is rhyolite. In fact, the lava dome that I showed, that I pointed out in the video, I believe that's Cerro La Jara, I think, if I'm remembering right, but it is it's a rhyolite lava dome. And lava domes are basically, they're built up by slow extrusions of lava from a volcano. There's a lot of geology we could go into here. But let's go ahead and go back to the knife, because this is a knife channel. So, I love the name. I really, really love the name. Next thing, this knife looks just incredible. I remember the first time I saw this on CJRB's Instagram, I was like, oh yeah, that is something I'm going to need to have. Looks really, really cool, very distinctive, especially in a world where so many knives are starting to just look very androgynous. I mean, I love the CJRB Scoria, but it's just a very knifey knife, you know? And so, yeah, I love seeing this design. It really, really stands out. And part of the reason it stands out is because what they did with the handle here. I'm a big fan of this. It looks kind of, you know, it's not as serious as, you know, just like a solid black G10. It's kind of fun and stuff. And I've heard a couple people say it's kind of goofy. I don't care. I think it looks really, really good. The other version of this knife is red. That version looks fantastic as well, but you guys know me. I had to get the blue version. I love the pivot collar. CJRB does pivot collars with pretty much, got the hiccups, all of their knives, and I think that's really, really cool. Pivot collars are classy, and they're, in my mind, they're a really easy way to spice up a budget knife. You know, it's a nice way to make an inexpensive knife feel just a little bit nicer, so I'm always a big fan of pivot collars. But yeah, and especially on the red and black one, the pivot collar looks really, really good. So yeah, big fan of all of that. Looks really, really cool. Next thing, this knife was just very well thought out. There's a lot of details on this knife that I appreciate, you know, from all the different milling, from the way they did this G10, the back spacer, the pivot collar, this little notch up here for your finger. We'll get into all of those in a little more detail later on, but I can tell that this knife was thought out. And everything that the designers or the I don't know, design team set out to do, I think they executed very well. And you could definitely tell that this knife was not just thrown together, which is good, right? Quality. One of the biggest ways that the design of this knife kind of flows into itself and kind of works best, in my opinion, is the ergonomics. The ergonomics on this knife are just stupendous. It's fantastic. This is a very, very comfortable knife. You get this in hand and it's like, yeah, oh yeah, that's for cutting. You know, you can see here that we have kind of this flat area and then it kind of kicks up and then goes down. And the way your hand just goes into there, you can just power through some cuts. You have this big, generous choil to choke up into. This area here, if you're in the choil, your thumb lands there if you want to do some utility cuts. For me, index finger here, flipper finger here, and you get into your cuts, your utility cuts like that. Very comfortable grip. Really, really good. The ergonomics on this knife are grade A good. The handle itself is not contoured, but you can see here that it has kind of these chamfers that, you know, kind of give it the illusion that it's contoured. You have this big area kind of milled out here, and, you know, it just helps it fit in the hand really, really well. I must say, when I first saw a picture of this knife, I was afraid that, like, areas here and here would be just sharp and pointy, but they've done it really, really, really good. They've done a fantastic job here. Knife feels great in my hand. I like that a lot. The pocket clip, too. I said this before, I'll say it again. If you want a pocket clip to disappear in your hand, you need to make it wide. You need to spread the, you know, area of contact over as much distance as you can, and that'll bury it in your hand. Feels fantastic. Good job there. So yeah, the ergonomics on this knife are definitely a highlight. Very, very comfortable. I've reviewed a lot of comfortable knives this year, but this one remains one of the most comfortable. So I like that a lot. They give you good access to the lock bar here. That's another one of those things that's kind of thought out well. You can see that. Into the lock bar is no problem at all. Good job. The pocket clip, let's talk about the pocket clip. I do have a couple of issues with it, but by and large, I think it's an okay clip. Again, it disappears in your hand. It's reversible. Good job. And yeah, just nice pocket clip. All right, let's talk about the blade. There's a lot to like here. Number one, AR RPM 9 steel. Fantastic steel. Amazing steel. I love that steel, especially in the budget category. I think it's very hard to do better than AR RPM 9 in the budget category. I think it beats out 14C, 154 CM. It's just a very, very good steel. One of my favorite, not just budget steels, but steels in general. So really, really nice. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention with the ergonomics and kind of the design flow, just because I saw it just now. Look how the flipper tab just kind of, how that all just kind of leads into each other nicely. Also, the texturing on the G10 is very, very well done. Yeah. Okay, back to the blade. AR RPM 9, top-notch stuff. Full flat grind. This thing slices like a dream. If you want a knife to just break down miles and miles and tons of cardboard, this is a good one to go because the ergonomics are comfortable. You can use this knife for a long time, and the way the ergonomics flow into the blade shape, you feel like the knife is just part of your hand. For your long slices, it works amazingly. You have a nice amount of belly, pretty much continuous belly, but also not like, you know, obnoxiously whomp belly. Very, very good. The full flat grind allows a knife to just pass the material effortlessly. The grind is done well. I mean, let's look at how thin it gets down there. I have not taken a behind the edge reading on this. I don't really think I need to, but you know what? Let's do one just for shits and giggles. Let's dig out my calipers. Oh, I've got so much crap on that. And I dropped the knife. Luckily it didn't land on my foot. Dig take out the good old calipers. Turn on. There we go. And we're going to do this off screen just because it's easier that way. So we'll be right back. Okay, I took a couple of measurements. And we got like 18 thousandths, 19 thousandths, 20 thousandths, 21 thousandths at different points on the edge. Some of that variation is probably just human error. But nice and thin. 20 thousandths for me is really good thinness. But with a full flat grind, you don't necessarily need to be that thin behind the edge because the knife will just cut and cut and cut. Look, we all go gaga over those super deep hollow grinds, and we all love to, you know, see those insanely thin behind the edge readings. And, you know, that stuff is all really, really great. And I used to be someone who was absolutely obsessed with behind the edge thickness. But honestly, after years and years of experience, but you know, after quite a bit of time of, you know, not just using knives, but doing my review cutting, you know, using a wide variety of knives, comparing all kinds of things to each other, I honestly think that the full flat grind is probably the best thing you can do with your blade, because it's kind of a generalist. It makes your knife a generalist tool. You know, this knife has a good, strong edge. Like, I'm not worried about damaging the edge. But you have so much real estate here that it just slices beautifully. Beautifully. You can do your, you know, you can do your beautiful slicing, and then you can also put this knife to some harder duty stuff, crunching through some ropes, some plastic, some rubbers, things like that. Rubbers. But this knife is simultaneously an elegant slicer while also being kind of a brute of a user. I think that's great. And I think that Artisan Cutlery has been knocking it out of the park this year with their full flat grinds. The Ahab is another knife I've been reviewing. And, you know, it's got quite a thin blade stock, although not that much thinner than the Caldera. Full flat grind comes down to a good thin edge, but that full flat grind just elevates it to a whole new level of sliciness, you know? And yeah, I'm a big fan of full flat grinds. Don't get me wrong, a good hollow is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I love to see that too, but I honestly think that, you know, a well-done flat grind is the superior way to go with a blade. You know, depending on what you're using it for and, you know, stuff like that. But I think it's kind of the best generalist way. Long story short, this knife is a performer. It slices like a champ. It cuts powerfully. It's, you know, reasonably tough. I like that a whole lot. Really, really good stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the action. Because, oh, and by the way, the build quality is good, perfectly centered. Well, actually, mine might be slightly off center now since I've been using it. Let's see what we got here. Might be slightly off center. Lockup is still rock solid. This was one of the most solid liner lockups I felt this year with my reviews. But the action. Let's talk about the action. Because the detent, I think, could definitely be stronger. But, you know, as I was carrying this knife, you know, you just kind of, if you carry a knife for long enough, you just kind of find that sweet spot that allows it to just function perfectly. And the detent, the action has gotten better since I first got the knife. The closing action is pretty nice. The thumb flick on this knife is fantastic. That hole is excellent for thumb flicking. It's slow rolling as well. Really, really nice. The reverse flick. For me, the reverse flick on this knife was not the greatest because, you know, with this pill-shaped hole, my finger just kind of wanted to go right to the top. And you can do that, but it feels a little bit awkward. And so, you know, to get the good reverse flick, you need to, like, stay at the bottom and go off to the side. A lot of times I find that I just kind of, or my finger just like go all the way through and it's like, ah! But, again, that's something you just kind of adjust to. And, I've been fidgeting with this knife, playing with it for so long that I have kind of developed the muscle memory to autocorrect for that. But when I first had it, it was definitely something I noticed as, this is not the most intuitive reverse flicker. But yeah, so the action I would say is good. It's very good action, but I did want to just mention that it had some problems for me. Light detint, a little bit of getting used to out of the box, but once you get used to it, perfectly fine. All right, now we can go on to some actual legitimate complaints, because even though I love this knife, you guys know me, I'm fair. I'll always give you an honest review. The first thing I want to bring attention to in terms of negatives is the clip, because I expect that I would like this clip a lot, and in a lot of ways this is a very good clip, but for some reason it just doesn't, like my pants always get caught right here, which it doesn't look like it should. Like it looks like there's enough clearance, but I'll put it into my pocket. I always, it'd go into about there, and then I have to give it an additional push down in the bottom. So, that's one of those things that's, not a deal breaker, but, a little bit of an annoyance. In the pocket, the clip works fantastically. I already talked that it's great in the hand. But yeah, just maybe the way they could have fixed that is to inset the clip. I like that they have flat screws. That's great, but I will always say, inset your clips. Inset your clips. And it might cause a little bit of ugliness on this other side, but inset clips. That's what we want. That's what we love. Next thing, the jimping here is pretty much non-functional. Let's take a look at that. Now, you guys know me. I'm kind of a jimping snob. I love my jimping. See how rounded that is and how it's not cut super deep in there? You can feel it, but like in use, it's actually located in a pretty good spot. It could probably go a little bit further, but I say that about all jimping. I just didn't feel like it gave any meaningful traction. And that's kind of a shame because, I don't know, I feel like it should be better jimping, finer jimping there. I think that would give you even more control over that blade, even more ability to make your powerful slices or some really, really strong push cuts. But, it's not the end of the world for a lot of people. I know a lot of people don't really like jimping that much. I happen to love jimping, so that's kind of a bummer for me, but might not be for you. The other thing, this is kind of a missed opportunity, but they use these really big flat screws here, and they just made them T6s. Should have done T8s. Again, that's another thing that a lot of people are just going to be hammering to the knife community. T8s all around. T8, T8, T8. We've heard it before. I'm going to repeat it. Next thing. I'm not a big fan of that lanyard hole. They should have included it with the backspacer. I mean, you have this big, huge backspacer here, which actually fitted very nice and flush. I'm not going to put a lanyard on here, so it doesn't really bother me, but, it is kind of, I guess, an eyesore. I do like that it's, a unique shape, but I can just imagine if you have, like, a lanyard tied here, your paracord would be bunched up pretty big and might get you in the palm and stuff. So, something to think about. Another thing that doesn't really bother me, but will bother a lot of people, I know. Yeah, this is a thick knife. In your pocket, yeah, you're definitely going to notice it. It's pretty tall. If you remember the video that I did with my dad a while back about the Civivi backlash, I'm still really impressed at how many people liked that video. I'm going to have to get Dad on the channel again. But, yeah, I brought this out, and he said that he's like, oh, yeah, I would never carry that because it's too fat. But, it's going to be an issue for some people. Doesn't really bother me. So, take it or leave it. And that's it. That is it. Those are all the complaints I have. So let's go to my final conclusions. This knife and the other version go for about $60. $59, $65 or something like that, I think is what I saw on Blade HQ. I think that's a completely fair price, and I think this is, it's actually a steal at that price. This is a wonderful, wonderful knife, and yeah, I recommend it wholeheartedly. I think there's another version, maybe a stonewash that with an all black handle. That might have just been a prototype, but you know, maybe it'll come out later. But yeah, I really, really like this knife. I guess that's one more complaint I could add is, you know, I don't mind this coating. It's an okay coating, but you know, I always like my stonewashes. So if they come out with a stonewashed version with this handle, I'd probably get one of those. But that's not really a complaint. But yeah, overall, this is just a fantastic knife. It's super ergonomic, super slicey, nice and affordable, built very, very well. It's just an awesome knife. I'm very, very glad to see this on the market, especially since it's something that's different. It's not just the same old patterns we always see. And, you know, there's a fine line to walk between making something that's new and different while also keeping it functional. And this knife, I think, completely did that. It scored well on all marks. So, go buy one. What are you waiting for? I've been Gideon. If you like this video, leave it a like, comment below, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Adios.